Welcome to Engaging Culture, a podcast presented by Bridgeway Christian Church. I'm Brian Kiley. We're recording this episode on Tuesday, July 21st, 2020. We just finished our first weekend with live outdoor services at Bridgeway, and Pastor Lance and I want to talk today about what we're learning during this crazy season and what the Bridgeway family can expect in the weeks to come. All of that and more on this episode of Engaging Culture. Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to Season 4, Episode 3 of the Engaging Culture podcast. Pastor Brian here, along with Pastor Lance. Pastor Lance, what's happening?
I am here and I'm ready to go.
All right.
I think everybody already knows this is a bizarre season, so we're going to talk about how bizarre it is, though.
Yes, we are. In case you were unaware that this is a bizarre season, we are going to make it very clear just how bizarre it is. For those watching live, we normally go live at 11 a.m. on Tuesday mornings. Had some scheduling stuff today, so we're at 5 o'clock tonight, and we're also wearing matching shirts, everybody. Yes. In case you didn't know, we are wearing black T-shirts, which is very exciting. We didn't even plan this.
We didn't. It is the future of Bridgeway. If you want to know what's going to happen, we will all be wearing these black T-shirts, just plain black T-shirts. There is nothing on them.
It's very simple. You don't have to think about it. But all right. So Lance, we just had a really cool weekend. One of the coolest weekends, certainly in the last few months. That's really without any argument there. And I would say even further back than that, in that we were able to have some live outdoor services on a Sunday morning, which we had not done in a long time. The only live services we'd had were very limited attendance with masks and everything else. Can you just share a little bit, what was this last weekend like for you from your perspective?
Yeah, well, it was interesting because it created a perfect juxtaposition, because on Saturday, we recorded 2 services in our sanctuary with no one in the room. And so it was pitch black, it was just cameras far away, and it was just the worship team leading, and there was no one in the room. And then I went out and preached, and there was no one in the room. All of a sudden on Sunday, we're outside in the bright, shining light. We were out in the back parking lot where it was underneath covered parking. And we had set up kind of this little tiny stage, just 2 speakers shooting out there, going old school. Jake and Hillary led us in worship, just the 2 of them. He had an acoustic guitar. And it was absolutely phenomenal. Everyone was kind of across the little driveway, in between the covered parking. There's this little strip there where cars drive. And so we were a little bit away from each other, but I could see everyone's face. Now, we were encouraging social distancing. We were encouraging face coverings. But once again, being outside gave us a lot more freedom. And so there was a lot of folks that it was just a matter of, you could see tears in their eyes. You could see them singing and joyfully laughing and loving it. And everyone was just so sweet to one another. And it felt like, not only did it feel like kind of the way it used to feel, right? Walking in and greeting everyone. I could run around and say hi to people, and we would all cheer together, and you could hear everyone cheering, but you could hear the people singing a couple places away from you. Underneath the awnings there created kind of an interesting acoustic where it sounded really full. I mean, we had about 250 people out there, and it sounded very full and robust and rich. But there was a lot of tears of joy that day. Yeah. So quite frankly, it was very, very moving. Now, you were there, so your experience was what?
Yeah, same. And I think it had a very different feel to when we reopened the building, however long ago that was, 4-6 weeks ago. I mean, that was emotional, and it was cool, and it was exciting in its own way. And it was really, really a special time. But I think to be outdoors in the sunshine, to see everyone's faces, as much as I'm very pro mask wearing and I'm very diligent about wearing my own mask, like I hate wearing masks because I don't like talking to people when we're wearing masks. I prefer to not wear masks. So to be able to have the ability to have conversations without all of that was really, really cool. And to see what it meant to people. And like, same thing, I saw the tears, and I was really moved by even just standing amongst the congregation and hearing the singing, which you're right, the covered parking in our building makes kind of an interesting acoustic situation, which I thought was really neat. Yeah. And then just to talk to people face to face, some of whom it was their first time back to campus, was really special. And a lot of these are people that, same as you, Lance, just their friends, their acquaintances, they're people that I'm used to interacting with regularly, that now, maybe we've exchanged some text messages or a phone call, but hadn't seen each other face to face in weeks or months. And it was really, really special to get to do that. So I just thought, and it felt like, okay, we're back having church and being a family again. And it all just felt a little bit more fun. And you're right that it was a funny juxtaposition, Saturday to Sunday, but what a blessing to have the technology and to have the team, most of all, to be able to provide even still an online option to our Sunday morning community for those who weren't able to make it. So it was pretty special all the way around. And if you're listening live, or even if you're listening in the future, Thursday morning, 7:30 a.m. at bridgeway.church/RSVP. That's when reservations go live for each weekend. And we're really excited to continue to do this. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, it was interesting because we were originally just going to kind of try things out with just the 9 a.m. service. And there was so much excitement, we ended up opening up the 11, and actually we ended up having to cap it, which was really interesting. So we are always looking, once again, more and more creativity and flexibility to trying to figure out how can we have more of our family together, because once again, as beautiful as it is to have 250 of us, we also recognize that means that there are thousands that are not there. But being able to provide online services at a high quality. I do have to share a couple stories about kind of behind the scenes. So I'm in there on Saturday, right? And we have the worship team, and they're absolutely phenomenal. So, you had Cliff on drums, and you had the Riggs, right? So Julie and John Riggs, she was singing and John was playing guitar. Well, we're in the middle of a song, and I was like, oh no, John Riggs didn't plug in his guitar. I can't hear anything. So I go running back. I'm sprinting back to Jeff Eberhard, who's our creative arts director. And I was like, Jeff, I can't hear the guitar at all. And he just smiles at me, right? He has a mask on. You can see his eyes just like, oh, shoot. Lance never has a clue. And he's like, yeah, so we don't put that in the house mix because there's nobody here. So it's in all of their in-ear monitors, but we can only hear some instruments. Because what they were doing is that when it has the full sound, it makes the camera operators and everybody else not be able to hear the calls to each other. And so they were keeping it as down as possible. But once again, talking about the excellence that this creative arts team has been doing in order to provide not only our live on Sunday, but they're providing like this extreme, really high quality mix for online, because they knew that the majority of our family was still online. So I had to share that. And then I got to share one other story. So some of you are aware of my my funny interactions with dragonflies. So there's a whole story to this, and we don't need to get into all of it. But very simply, at key periods in my wife's life and mine, when we were praying and asking God about different things, a dragonfly would show up. Now, this has happened actually indoors and outdoors. So it has a little bit of an odd quality to it. One of the most powerful to me was I was anxious about the idea of going to Africa to do a mission work because of wondering how my body would handle it with panic disorder. And I was outside, and I was exercising, talking to Susie, and she was talking about trusting the Lord. And over our house came a swarm of, I would guess, 60 dragonflies, swarmed and just held over the top, probably about 10, 12 feet up. And that was already after we had this dragonfly thing. And so it has this really deep meaning that God there's a dragonfly, and he just reminds me, listen, I'm with you always, but sometimes I'm just going to remind you. And he pings my mind with these dragonflies that is the presence of the Holy Spirit. So Having said all that story, that's not what anyone asked for, but it does set up what happens Sunday. So Sunday, we're outdoors and we're starting the service, and right when worship started, a dragonfly came right into the parking lot. Now you got to remember, there's no flowers there, there's no bushes there, it's just asphalt. Dragonfly comes into the middle area between the stage and the people and starts flying a line back and forth long ways. The entire service, just one dragonfly, not leaving, going back and forth. I would say probably maybe a 20-yard kind of stream, and he did it the entire service. He ended up going away after the service was over, and when we started the next one, he showed back up at the beginning and then flew away. So to me, that was this little, it's kind of like some people see rainbows and there's something valuable there. To me, this was a little wink from the Lord of going, you know what? This is really good, you guys. And I just want you to know I'm with you. Whether there's a dragonfly there or not, I'm with you. But he just gave a little gift. So to me, that made the day even extra special.
That's awesome. It's funny you use the term wink because, I refer to instances like that. I call them, I think I've even used this term with you before, just a God wink. God's just like, hey, I got you.
That's neat.
Like, I got you, And like, that's what was on my mind as I've heard you talk about just the dragonfly. I mean, I think it's really neat that God has used that in your life at different key moments. And to have that happen this time is pretty awesome. So just a cool, hey, God being like, hey, what you're doing, like you said, what you're doing is good. And I'm here with you. So for the remainder of this episode, we had two kind of things we wanted to hit on. Number one is I think we're at an interesting time now to sort of reflect a little bit on this season that is still very much ongoing. We're not at the end of it, but we're in kind of a different phase. Hey, we're starting to figure out what does church on the weekend look like? How can we start gathering together again? And it's just a time for us to reflect on a little bit of kind of what we've learned from a kind of a church perspective and a leadership perspective. And then we'll close out this episode just for those listeners that are part of our Bridgeway family to give them a sense of kind of what are our plans for the next month. We have some really exciting things coming up. Of course, we have to write everything in pencil, which I'm getting sort of tired of, but I think we have a pretty good plan for the next month. That's pretty exciting. But first thing is, not to belabor this point because it's been said a lot, but 6 months ago, the idea of not having church for a weekend or even 2 weekends would have seemed unthinkable. And now we've had to navigate sort of a few months without it, and we're just starting to get back into having outdoor gatherings. I think if either you or I, if somebody asked us 6 months ago, hey, is church on the weekend and gathering with other believers an important thing? We both would have been like, yeah, like that's not news to us. We know that.
Right.
But what have you learned about the importance of weekend gatherings during these last few months when they've been non-existent or sporadic or just whatever they've been?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think that had I not been able to gather online, I probably would have had a very dramatic response. I think not being able to gather as a larger family in person already has a significant hit. But I'm so thankful for the online presence, and then also for our staff and our volunteers that were a part of that season, those that were willing to come in and spend time with us, even when it was limited, all that stuff. I'm very, very thankful to everybody that was worshiping with us and ministering with us. But I think that what it's highlighting for the church in general, including you and I, is that there is something that we are not fully aware of the impact that happens when human beings get together in the same room. That I think that maybe in the future, we might be able to do a little bit more studies, and I don't mean us, I'm just talking about humanity, to figure out there's something about the power of touch, there's something about the power of proximity, there's something about the power of shared experience, there's something about the power of God moving in one heart and spurring another, that when the Bible talks about don't forsake in meeting together, right? When he was talking about the power of community, I think that there's been a million books written on it. I don't think the average believer has fully caught the importance of that. I think leaders are still trying to figure out the importance of that. I think this season just put a massive exclamation point on it and was saying, listen, stuff is going on when you're present that is not happening when you're not present. And so what the reason why we are so clear that it's not caught by the greater body is that church attendance had become, in the recent, I'd say, decade, very, very spotty, and people were kind of take it or leave it with attending church. And I think that once all of a sudden everything cracked down, everybody realized, if I don't have that option, I'm starting to freak out about it. And then they began to see, it's one thing to say, I'm not going to church today because I have better things to do. It's another thing when you're suddenly told, even if you wanted to, you can't. Yeah. And I think that caused people to reflect and go, oh my goodness, what would I do if I can't be together with my spiritual family? So to me, God has highlighted the importance of three specific things. And one of them is general church attendance. One of them is the necessity of small group community. And I think the third that he has just recently highlighted is the power of corporate praise. And so I think that little by little, we're just getting big, significant exclamation points put on different parts of the Christian experience. But I know you kind of feel the same way. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I don't know that my thoughts are all that original, but they are profound to me, not in their originality, but in their depth. In that you talk to people who maybe go through serious illness and then are healthy, right? Or you and I in our own different things, you more so than me, but both of us have dealt with some physical injuries in the last year or two. And you deal with an injury, and then now you're and then you're healthy again. There is this sense of, man, I did not realize, like I've been dealing with a calf injury the last month. Like, man, I didn't realize how much I used my calf until it hurt, right? Or how much I took for granted that this muscle just works right when I need it. And it was funny to me how, in a lot of even conversations I had this last Sunday at church, how, some of them were talking, pastoral conversations about difficult things, but some of them were we're talking about, hey, is there going to be a soccer season? Hey, what have you guys been up to the whole summer? Like just connecting with friends and acquaintances, and just the value of those sort of unplanned, like we didn't schedule this, but the ability to just connect and be in person and to have conversations. And I think it's just easy to take those things for granted, but when they get taken away, to use sort of the injury analogy, when they hurt, you realize how much you needed them to begin with. And it's interesting in talking to our student ministry staff, especially I'm thinking about something that Pastor Ryan has been talking about recently, our middle school pastor, is he's seen in his students this hunger to get together. And, it's fashionable to complain that kids are addicted to their devices, right? And to their screens. And let's just be real, we as adults are too. Yes. But how amazing it is that he's seeing these kids are going, I don't want my devices anymore. I want to see a real person, right? That might be something that God uses in the midst of all of this to, like, on the one hand, I'm super grateful that, like, even right now, here we are sitting in our own houses, like recording something on Zoom. We can see each other's faces. We can broadcast it on the internet. This is all really great. But on the other hand, it's like we're all sick of staring at our screens, and we really crave that human touch, these things that we took for granted. And then I completely agree with you. I think that in terms of just the power of corporate worship, of corporate sitting under the teaching of God's word, these are things that, again, I never question the value or the importance of them, but there's something about experiencing them when they've been withheld for so long that has just been profound for me, and has brought, I think, to me, just even as a church attender and as a member of the body that is Bridgeway, has renewed in me my passion and my excitement for just the gathered weekend congregation. Is a pretty powerful thing for me.
Yeah, just even talking about just whether or not we take it out of the spiritual context, the power of just being with people. I remember the first time I ever went to a concert as a kid, and I had always listened to music by myself. And all of a sudden I was in a shared experience where everyone was engaging with the music at the same time. And there was an atmosphere where you could hear somebody else get fired up or sing a song that you knew. And there was the weird bond, and you were like, I know that song too. And so, I mean, even if you just take it from a sheer human level, there's something powerful about being together.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, shifting a little bit to the leadership side of this thing, this has obviously been a different time to be a leader. And so many of us, a lot of us lead in our jobs. You and I lead in our jobs. Different ones might lead in their families or in their communities or their neighborhoods. We lead in a lot of different ways. Is there something that you've learned about leadership in this time that has been helpful to you and maybe might be helpful to others that are leading in different contexts?
Yeah, I think a couple things. One of them is you're never more apparent than in crisis situations. And I don't mean apparent as in be able to be seen. I mean, space, parent. It is no longer about what you think. It is about you managing people and what they think. It is so much about having to put on a parental hat and say, everybody's squabbling or everybody's saying something or everybody's got an opinion or so-and-so's really angry. And how is that going to ricochet off the rest? And you're spending a lot of time managing emotions. You're spending a lot of time managing encouragement levels, spirits, stuff like that. Because what's going on with this season is far more exhausting emotionally than it is physically. And so you don't have us doing things where we're physically getting wiped out. We are just emotionally spent. And so you have all this exhaustion and people acting like they're exhausted and reacting like they're exhausted when they haven't really been doing anything. And it's because the emotional toll is so heavy. So you suddenly become an emotional manager in these seasons. And so one of the funny things I think that you and I talk about quite a bit, and I talk about with all the leaders, is did we accomplish anything today? Like, because you spend every day talking about stuff and you're not doing anything. And you feel like, well, have I even done my job? When in fact, your job shifted. Your job suddenly became the management of spirits of people rather than the bodies of those people trying to get stuff done. So I think that's one piece that really pinged in for me. What about you?
Yeah, I think I've experienced in this season, probably more than any other in my life, just the need that as a leader, you have to be ready to adjust when the rules change.
Yeah.
That's just life. And I think that we experience that in different ways. And I think right now we're experiencing that in a very extreme way. And when you're one of the leaders, you have to recognize people are going to be looking to you for something. And a lot of times you need to, like you said, sort of manage things emotionally while you're trying to manage your own emotions. But we can't even in quote unquote normal time, whatever that means anymore. We can't get locked into this idea of, okay, well, I know how to lead in these circumstances and I can just put the train on the tracks and be good to go. As a leader, you always have to be ready to adjust because you just never know when things are going to change. And I think one thing I've learned just over my working career is as much as people can just emotionally really struggle, I think the reverse of that is also true, that people and organizations can be very resilient, that we can handle a lot of things. Again, I think we've as a church and other churches as well have walked through things that would have seemed unimaginable not that long ago. Yes. So I think on the one hand, it's that need to be flexible while at the same time recognizing that there's a resiliency, maybe even to yourself and to organizations that is a little easier to overlook when things are peaceful, so to speak.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good.
Now, another thing that you and I have talked about quite a lot is we're in this year of connection. We're talking a lot about unity, and that's been a huge theme. It's a huge theme of the book of Ephesians. But we've had to wade through stuff as a church that could be potentially divisive. Obviously, in society, there's all sorts of divisive stuff going on right now. What have the last few months taught you about unity and kind of what it is and how it works?
So because I've had to work on unity, and I say had to because God really called me to do that in our region, and because we have as a church kind of always walked into difficult waters, I feel like I was a little bit more prepared for that. Hold on one second.
Cough guard.
Yes, that is the beauties of allergies. Um, but because I had that, I had a little bit more of a head start on how difficult unity is. Now, having said that, knowing the difficulty and still walking it doesn't make it less difficult. It just still is difficult. So what I have really realized was the obvious. Unity is hard work. And what it means is it means that sometimes when you're strong, you need to be able to listen deeper and put aside your own personal desire to be heard. And then when you can't do that, you have to immediately go into mending and repairing. And so both of those are actually a little bit tiring to be able to do. And so a lot of times people just don't want to, and they just let it fly. What they don't realize is then the cleanup, they talk about an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. It's that idea of saying, once you have to clean up all the damage that we did emotionally, it's way harder. So what I found is that unity is not only highly valuable, it is difficult to maintain, but so worth it. And maybe that was obvious to everybody, but that is, I think any leader that has had to work in this season, that.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And something that you and I've talked about privately that I've said in some other places is that you don't learn unity when everybody's naturally getting along.
Right.
That you learn unity when you're in the midst of conflict, potentially about serious issues, but you have some tie that binds you that is of greater significance than whatever it is that you're disagreeing on. I think that unity is a challenge for a lot of reasons, and I'm glad you talked about sort of the damage of disunity a little bit, to say that, man, when we just say we're going to bail, that creates there's all sorts of junk left in our wake that is not good and that is not helpful. That ultimately fighting for unity is worth it. But I think, I'll just be honest with you, I think an active question in my own life that I wrestle with a lot is what does unity require of me? And I don't mean that in the sense of like, what's the minimum I have to do to say that I'm pursuing unity?
Right.
But does unity, what does it look like to be united when I cannot in good conscience say, okay, yes, I see your perspective and agree with it.
Right.
Can you be united in that circumstance? Of course you can. Yeah, I believe that you can. But what's the difference between really disagreeing and feeling that there's consequence to disagreements, but not being divisive, right? Because I think oftentimes we can be divisive and that's really destructive, or we can accuse other people of being divisive for the purpose of cutting off conversation. But I think that question of again, what does unity require of me, and to what extent do I need to be clear in my convictions? To what extent do I need to be malleable and willing to change? How much am I supposed to do I need to constantly be in a state of listening all the time where I don't have any convictions anymore, where I'm willing to be malleable? And obviously that's an extreme case. But I think these are very real questions that we have to learn to walk through. And a lot of what we've experienced on a societal level at this time, especially as followers of Christ are divided on a lot of different issues, I think it's been a time for us to really take stock of, okay, what is it that divides us? And then what is it that unites us? And ultimately what matters more? Because I'll be the first to admit, it can be easy to lose sight of those things when emotions are high and we're really excitable about different things.
Yeah, I think the best shot that we can have at that, because I don't believe in conformity. The only thing we should ever, expect full conformity in is conforming to the image of Jesus Christ, right? But when we're talking about human to human, I don't believe that God is looking for conformity as much as unity. I think that he's not looking for sameness. Now, what that means, though, that's super easy to say in a line. Living it out where you go, no, I very much disagree, and how am I still in fellowship?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that reality is something that we've had to walk into both on a personal and church level. And that is a hard place. So the only shot I have at walking that out is putting things into priority. Let's say that what I believe is absolutely true. Now, where does it line up in the priority list? So for example, let's say I'm in a group and the group says, we all believe in theistic evolution. And I don't believe in theistic evolution, right? And I actually very strongly don't believe in theistic evolution, which is the idea that God just started evolution, kind of disappeared, and let it kind of run its course. That it's more God started the Darwinian model. Now, I don't believe that. And I actually believe that pretty strongly that that's not the case. But if I'm in a full group that believes that, I may think I'm right, but there's a higher priority than me being right. There's a higher priority than my view on creationism. There's a higher priority to anything that we're doing, and that happens to be God and his agenda. And if God is saying, listen, I understand you guys all have different opinions here. What I'm telling you is that your unity as a body to focus on what I want you to focus on and not focus on your own petty squabbles and things that you think are important. That's the only shot I have, because if you end up trying to say, well, the only way I can stay a part of a group is to be untrue to myself, I think that causes a serious festering problem, because eventually you'll snap. That will either crush in you or you will snap at some point. So I think that we're allowed to say, I truly believe I am right, but there is a higher calling that I have. That's about the only shot. You see it a different way?
No, I think that's really well said. And I think sort of to extend out that analogy a little bit more, we might say that you're not going to go join the Theistic Evolution Society, because the whole point of the Theistic Evolution Society is a bunch of people that believe in that. But my guess would be that if you're at a I don't know, random gathering of pastors from around the city, you're not going to be like, and keep those Theistic Evolution people out of here. You know, like, okay, we can all get together and talk about reaching our city with the gospel, even if we don't agree on that thing. But you might say, all right, yes, I'm not going to join your little group that's dedicated just to this issue where I disagree with you.
Well, so, and it's not even wise to do that, because what I'm doing is I'm coming in and simply just crashing their party. Right. And they're like, you know what? Honestly, we really don't want you here in our little club. You're kind of a drag.
This is not the place for like debating this thing.
Totally.
That's pretty funny. Yes. So I think that that's a great example and a great illustration. Now, as we kind of last thing we wanted to talk about here is, I feel like, okay, here we are sitting here on July 21st. I feel like we are really in a interesting position to kind of move some things forward as a church, where obviously things have regressed a lot in terms of different restrictions, and I think we've become a little bit more aware and just accepting of the fact that we're going to be under some restrictions for a little while. That's bad for a ton of different reasons, primarily people's health and everything related to that. So I don't mean to minimize that at all, but I think that we're in a position as a church where we can say, okay, we know we're going to be in a tough spot for a while. So how do we make the most of it? What can we do to kind of move things forward to do some positive things? So can you talk a little bit, and I'll fill in as well. What are some things just for our Bridgeway family that we're looking at in the next, month, 6 weeks and beyond to bless our community, bless our church family, and to get us together a little bit more?
Yeah, so I'm going to talk to only one primary aspect, because quite frankly, you have a beautifully unique position to be able to hear a lot about what's going on in the ground floor on the day-to-day. And so you have some kind of exciting things that you've revealed to us in the leadership. But the one thing that I would focus on is we are able to continue to figure out what we can do outside. And what that means is trying to make the best of a bad situation where there can actually be some unusual blessing that comes with it. That there are certain blessings to being able to have a building that we can go to blackout, because there's a bunch of technological things that we do in there that require that. But there's also something beautiful about being out in the sun where there might be a breeze, where there might just be fresh air, and also enjoying the Lord in that environment. Well, we don't get to do that very often. This might be one of those beautiful limited times where we get a chance to experience something fresh with the Lord. I'll just say, and this obviously is super brand new, but we're even having some of our leadership look into the idea of what would it look like to create a little bit of a larger structure that is semi-permanent, to be able to have some outdoor meetings. And what would that look like? And what would that investment require if it would allow us to have more of our family together on more of a consistent and protected. And when I say protected, I mean sometimes just the gear. A lot of people, we think about, I can be outside. That is true. Yes, you can. You were built to be in all sorts of environments. A lot of the things that we use to do church are not very good with elements, right? So if it starts to drizzle on you, you dry out. Circuitry does not in the same way. So once again, we're trying to look at what is a bit more of a bigger picture that we can look at to try to keep our family more organized on a more consistent basis to where they would be more blessed. So once again, we have been very flexible and our team is incredibly creative. They're the ones that got us outdoors in the first place. And it's a lot of work for them and they're willing to do it as long as people are blessed. So, but you have a lot of fun people around you that have killer ideas. So
yes, I do. Yes, I've been the one who talks to all the people that have all the great ideas.
Yeah,
which has
it's
been
awesome.
really, really fun. So, but yeah, first of all, just to back up what you said, it's been exciting even on the last couple of days. Just again, step one of a very long process of really determining, okay, we had a great weekend this last weekend. What a blessing to have a huge parking lot with huge covered parking and shade, and that we were able to accommodate 500 people between two services. I mean, just unbelievable. But at the same time, we recognize there's limitations to that setup. That, like you said, it's not going to work in the rain. I had somebody even say like, "Ooh, that'd be kind of cool to like hear the rain while we're like underneath the covered parking." And I'm like, "You've never sat under this covered parking while it's raining, have you? It is really loud,
really loud."
So, and then obviously, the gear stuff. So to talk about, like you said, a semi-permanent structure that allows for enough airflow for it to be safe, but then for it to be something that's used in the long term is really, really exciting. We're talking about, had a really fun conversation with Pastor Jake today about looking at doing some outdoor worship nights in the month of August. We have, tentatively, we planned our first one, and if it goes great, we'll do another one in the month of August, which is really cool. We've talked to a woman in our church who teaches yoga and holy yoga, and it's a very sort of in a very Christ-centered manner. We're looking at having yoga on campus on a Tuesday morning, and I know you're great at that, Lance, but I think it's best that you not show up just because we don't want to embarrass anybody with how good you are at it.
I understand. I appreciate that. I will do that for the sake of the people.
Yeah, that's very, very kind of you. And then another gentleman in our church who is who works in the fitness industry is going to come out, and we're looking at starting a fitness class on Thursday morning. A lot of people know we've done live prayer online. Like, I'm really proud of this fact that other than a couple of days where the person who was supposed to pray forgot, we've had live prayer on Facebook every weekday morning for, over 2 months now, I think, which is really awesome. We're looking at having live in-person prayer on Wednesday mornings on campus, where those who are able to come out and want to just be with other people can pray together. We had a great conversation with the Kidsway team today about, hey, what would it look like for us to start to plan maybe a family event where families can come out and it's socially distanced and safe, and maybe we have some games and whatever. And then looking at possibly doing a regional thing towards the end of August, where maybe we gather at like 5 or 6 different parks, and you're able to gather with people who live close to you. And I don't know, I've been very energized these last couple of days in talking about all of this stuff with you and with our teams and with others, just because it feels like instead of, I've just had too many conversations where it's like, all right, here's the list of everything that's canceled now. And I've just done so much of that to be to a place where we're saying, all right, we're learning kind of this new rhythm. We're learning the situation that we're in. How can we still have fellowship? How can we still have community? How can we still have worship? And it feels like we're just starting to move forward again. So I guess I just want our Bridgeway family to know that the era of only screen-based options is coming to a close. We're going to continue to offer a lot of screen-based stuff just because for safety and convenience and comfort and all of that. But we're really trying to get creative and really trying to explore what are some different things we can do to get people together. And I think that August is going to be a pretty exciting month as we start to have more of those types of events, and we're able to see more faces and more smiles and start to be an in-person community again. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, I think all that stuff just kind of warms everybody's heart, and it gives us a lot of hope and kind of something just fun to think about. I love having some good news after we've had a bunch of frustration. I do kind of, just as we close out, really encourage our congregation that these seasons are going to ebb and flow. That as our country, specifically our state, is going through trying to compensate and work with a lot of this COVID situation and virus situation. Just understand that there's going to come times when it may need to be more restricted and sometimes when it's a little bit more lenient, but without automatically going, oh, well, then forget it kind of idea. Is just realizing, as I think Pastor Brian was sharing, God built us to be a little bit more resilient and flexible than that. And I think what our next question should be after something comes down that is more restrictive or frustrating again in the future, I think our next question should be, oh, I wonder how God's going to handle this one, right? Or, oh, wow, I wonder what he's going to allow our church leaders to come up with this time. That way there's a little bit more of a hopeful attitude and a spirit, because at some point we're going to move past all this, but it is a longer season of ups and downs. And I think that we can't be all or nothing. We have to be a bit more flexible. So that would be my encouragement.
No, that's super good. Something I like to say, I think in any situation is you acknowledge the challenges and you embrace the opportunities, right? Yeah. That there are, and I love what you said, that man, what if we were people who in the face of restriction, like we can feel the grief in that. Like, I don't think we need to pretend like it's not a bummer, but to be able to say, okay, God is still present and at work.
Yes.
God, as Pastor Ryan led us this last weekend and sharing during the call to worship, God works things together for his good. God is at work in this situation. What are the opportunities present in the midst of the challenges? And I think, man, what a great opportunity for us to really live that out before a world that's anxious and fearful and nervous and sad and all of that. Man, if we can live in that way, I think that could be really powerful.
Amen. Well said.
Yep. Cool. All right. Well, hey, thanks everybody for watching on this episode of Engaging Culture, recorded on a Tuesday evening, which I don't think we have ever done. So we appreciate you watching. We appreciate you listening. Thanks to Lucian and Brenton, who are going to take the video and audio and make it look good and sound good. And we'll be back with you in another couple of weeks for another episode of Engaging Culture. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Engaging Culture, a podcast by Bridgeway Christian Church. If you enjoyed this show, please consider subscribing and leaving a review on iTunes. Thank you so much for listening. Music is used under the Creative Commons license and is provided by Dexter Britton.